Dogs and Stingray are coming for you. This is Stephen Ray, aka Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Good afternoon, Mr. Feinbaum. Stingray here, and I'm about to shoot the bull with you like all the Auburn students do down at Auburn. Worst defense ever! So without further ado, here is the biggest Alabama going for the field goal. The kick is up. It is away. It is no good. Chris Davis bringing it out of the end zone. Oh, he's got blockers. Chris Davis up the sideline. Here he goes. Here we go, guys. Dobbs back to pass. Launching the ball. Jennings. He's got it. Jennings. He's got it. Touchdown, Tennessee! They shocked the Dogs in Sanford Stadium! Are you kidding me? My God almighty! What an epic way for the Tennessee-Georgia rivalry to end this game! What a play! Wow! What's going on, guys? This is Stephen Ray, aka Stingray, and I want to welcome you into a brand new edition and the first ever Stingray show. Now, of course, I tried to do this show a couple of years ago, but unfortunately it did not work out. So I want to welcome all of you into a brand new Stingray show. And what we're going to do is we're going to have fun with this, but it's not going to be just me. But what I want to do real quick is, what would a Stephen Ray Stingray show be without a little weather off the top? So as you can see, I'm down here in the lower corner here. But let me take you over here to the radar and show you that all of Mississippi is drying out right now. Basically, if you are down here towards the Jackson, Mississippi area, up here towards Hernando, Mississippi, all of the rain is pretty much gone for you guys, because I know it's been a real deluge of rain over the past few days. So everything is clearing out. And if you're in Tuscaloosa as well, it looks like things are really starting to clear out. Let me put this into motion for you. Now, if you're over here towards Birmingham, Coleman, or Huntsville, you have a few more hours of rain moving on through. But like I said, if you're in Tuscaloosa and points off to the west, even back in Mississippi, it is moving out. The rain is going to be moving out. It's going to be a beautiful weekend and great weather for college football 2020, and it's been a long time getting here. So let me take you back over here and we will get started. Let me turn that off and bring me back up live. And I want to thank everybody for doing this. And yes, Hotty Toddy, thank you. Where's the Ole Miss helmet? I don't actually have an Ole Miss helmet, but I do have some Ole Miss gear that I will be adding to my shelf earlier next week. So once again, we are going to do a bunch of stuff today. We're going to have two guests on, but right now I would like to introduce to you my co-host on the show, and he is actually a former TV reporter back in his younger days, and he knows his stuff in front of the camera. And so I want to introduce him to you. His name is Heath, and I will bring him on now and let you guys get to know Heath and let him explain a little bit about himself.
Stephen, you make me sound like I'm in the retirement home.
No, man. I apologize about that. I did realize what I said. I apologize about that.
That's all right. It's part of my work release program to join you anyway, right?
Right. So going ahead and, kind of introduce yourself and tell everybody what, who you are and what you do.
Well, Heath Hopkins, I was originally part of CSS, the original SEC network way back when. I decided to leave television, become a small business owner. I've kept my toe in production, but I miss going to media days. I miss seeing games live. I miss asking coaches the questions I wanted to ask them.
Yes.
But I've stayed completely in SEC football, and I'm just glad to be here.
Well, that's awesome. Well, you actually live in Hernando, Mississippi, which is actually pretty close to Oxford. So go on ahead and tell everybody your story about Hernando that you told me yesterday, because that is quite a fun little story.
It's Hernando, Mississippi used to be known as the marriage capital of the world. And the funny part about Hernando is the reason they were the marriage capital of the world is they used not to ask people their age. So people in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s used to drive to Hernando from all over the country to get married because they wouldn't confirm their age. And there were plenty of 14, 15, 16-year-olds getting married. And so that was always the fun part. But fun little fact, Jerry Lee Lewis got married to his cousin here in Hernando.
And that is really close to Memphis, Tennessee, and also Oxford, Mississippi. So I'm very sure that you have a bunch of Ole Miss fans around you, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Plenty of my family, plenty of neighbors, plenty of friends. I was telling you earlier today that it doesn't matter what neighborhood you're in, whether it be a gated community or a startup community, it doesn't matter which, you're going to see plenty of window decals and garden flags of both schools of State and Ole Miss all over DeSoto County and the state of Mississippi.
I got you. Well, let's go on ahead and start. Have you been watching any college football so far, even though the SEC hasn't really kicked off yet?
Usually, I plan my schedule and my life around football. We just recently moved. If you hear some drilling in the background, they're putting up my television as we speak. But yeah, I've watched some football here and there, yes.
What has been your biggest takeaways through the first 3 weeks? As, of course, you know, everybody is postponing due to COVID and all that stuff.
Well, here just outside of Memphis, the Tigers were really excited about their football season. University of Memphis last year going to the Cotton Bowl, having a phenomenal season. They're a little upset that they've missed a game.
Yes.
I believe tonight they were supposed to play. And folks here around town are a little upset, but they're also happy that we've got football.
Yes.
Big 12. They're off to a little bit of a...
Yeah, I know. And let me do this while I've got you, while we're talking about the Big 12. Let me go on ahead and roll some of the highlights from the week 1. As you can see, Louisiana knocked off actually a ranked Iowa State team, and that's not a good thing, especially for the Big 12 when they were the one of the teams and the conferences that were like, we're going to play football no matter what. So that's very unfortunate for them. And I would actually be worried if I were them, moving forward because, Texas Tech struggled with Houston Baptist. Now, Oklahoma and Texas, they kind of held their own, but of course they were playing UTEP and Missouri State. So you would expect them to beat those teams. But Texas and Oklahoma, they're the top of the top. And even Kansas and Les Miles got beat by Coastal Carolina. So not a good way to start for the Big 12 in 2020.
Well, I think you said everything right there, 2020.
Yes.
Everything's crazy this year. Nothing's making sense. Rules necessarily don't apply to everybody. And it's just been a crazy season so far. And I don't expect it to get any easier. And I hope the SEC adds a little bit to that craziness.
Yes. And as you can see, we're rolling highlights of another upset in week 1 for the Big 12. That was Arkansas State and Kansas State. And Arkansas State, real quick, has also had their game postponed. We'll go over that here in just a second for this weekend due to COVID. So let me go on ahead real quick and show you some of the news and notes that we have for this upcoming weekend. And the big one is going to be Notre Dame, and Wake Forest has been rescheduled for December the 12th because of COVID and contact issues due to them playing South Florida last weekend, and South Florida has also had their game postponed as well. Do you have any thoughts about the Wake Forest Notre Dame game being rescheduled?
Wait, the virus is contagious?
Yes.
I hope all these games get rescheduled. I don't think anybody wants less football. I think we're all here waiting. And if they even said, hey, we're going to push things back another month, I don't think anyone's going to argue.
Right.
I know that would help the Little Ten, the Big Ten out.
Yes.
But I think everybody wants football. Everybody wants to see football. and just with the craziness of the whole scheduling, I don't think adding a game or two at the end of your schedule is going to be that big of a deal if we had to push the championships back a week or two.
Yes. Now, this is quite interesting. I'll go ahead and roll this. North Texas at Houston has also been canceled, and the past 5 opening games for Houston have been canceled. First up, they were supposed to play Rice. Then that game got axed due to COVID. Then they were supposed to play Washington State. And the Pac-12 said, no, we're going to cancel that. Then they wanted to schedule a game with Memphis, like you said, which was canceled. And then they wanted to do the Baylor Bears. And the Baylor Bears last Saturday, they did not meet the requirements of the COVID issues for the Big 12. So that game got canceled. And then, of course, North Texas this weekend. So you got to wonder, is Dana Holgorsen in Houston ever going to take the field this year?
If it went for bad luck, he wouldn't have luck at all.
I know.
I don't know what's going to go on with
right.
Houston. I've been on that campus a couple of times. Jim Nantz from CBS, a proud alum there. They got a parking spot for him right there in front of the front gates there at the stadium. But
yes,
I have no idea of how Houston is going to battle through. And of course, they've got tropical storms and everything else still coming in. It's just been ridiculous for Houston. But hopefully, they'll have something to cheer about when it comes to sports and Cougar football.
Yes. Now, I will say this. Their next scheduled game is supposed to be October the 8th against Tulane. So hopefully they can actually get on the field and play against Tulane. So I wanted to real quick talk about another big issue that was in the news week 1, and we talked about this in private yesterday, was that Southern Miss up and fired Jay Hopson after a 28-23 record at Southern Miss. But the reason that they fired him was because the South Alabama Jaguars came actually into Southern Miss and actually beat them. And that was the first loss or first win for South Alabama on the road in 17 tries. So that was a very embarrassing loss for Southern Miss. What were your thoughts about the Southern Miss departure of Jay Hopson?
Surprised, but not really. He lost some of his best players on both sides of the ball, and Southern Miss is a very, very proud program.
Yes.
All the Mississippi programs are very proud program. I don't care if you're talking about Delta State or Jackson State with Deion. But all programs here in the Magnolia are very proud programs. And Southern Miss, the folks of Hattiesburg, Forest County, they're very proud of their programs. And I don't know why they pulled the trigger so quick.
Right.
One game. I don't understand the quick trigger on it. Hopefully they have a plan in place before that trigger is pulled.
Yes.
I would love to see big names come to Mississippi or return to Mississippi.
Yes.
Whether it be former head coaches at one of the universities, a.k.a. Hugh Freeze.
Yes.
We don't know. I was shocked to hear that Hugh Freeze would have to take a 7-figure or close to a 7-figure pay cut to come back to Hattiesburg, or come to Hattiesburg, I should say.
Because Jay Hopson was only making $500,000 because he was a Southern Miss boy, a local boy, and he loved it. But apparently he kind of, lost interest in the job for whatever reason. And thus he just kind of looked in the South Alabama game. He really looked like he was just like, okay, well, I'm really just going to tune out for this season. And unfortunately, I think that's what got him fired.
Yeah, I believe everything you just said. I agree with what you just said. I was, once again, just so shocked with him being a Southern Miss guy.
Yes.
They pulled on the first game of the season. It just still blows my mind.
What are some of your biggest, shocking, I guess you would say, surprises through the first 3 weeks? And then, of course, your biggest disappointments?
Florida State was a shocker.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone saw that coming.
No.
And starting off a new era there and getting things going to lose in the fashion. Big 12 has been the biggest shock. Big 12 is just, we can all make jokes a little 12 or medium-sized 12.
Yes.
Big 12 is struggling. Let's call it what it is. They're not looking good at all.
No. And, they haven't performed well in the last few times that they've actually made the playoffs. Like last year, they were really overmatched by LSU, a game which I actually went to and watched Jalen Hurts' last game in person. And it was a shame to see him go out like that, man.
Yes.
I mean, they got drug all over Atlanta. I mean, it was over by the end of the first quarter.
Maybe the 85 Bears would have struggled with LSU that night. LSU was higher.
Yeah.
But, you hate to see I think I'm like most sports fans. Back years ago when the Yankees were winning the World Series every year, it made it boring. When Tiger Woods was winning all the events, it got boring. We don't want to see domination. We want to see people compete.
Yes.
And I remember for years we were talking about, who's going to be Tiger's rival? Who's going to be Tiger's rival in golf? And it was boring. I stopped watching golf because of Tiger. It had nothing to do with Tiger. I knew what was going to happen. Tiger was going to win. So I hope that we see competitiveness come over here in all the conferences. And I think we're getting to see that in the Big 12. I think that's what makes it so exciting. At the same time, LSU just dominated everybody last year.
Man, you know what? I never thought I would ever say this, that right now, especially with how bad they looked last year. But I'm going to say it right here on the record on the first Stingray show. They are back. Manny Diaz, and Rick Lashley have that team rolling right now. Did you watch them last weekend against Louisville, a ranked team? They went in there and took them to the woodshed. Last year, I believe Miami was one of the worst teams with the offensive line giving up sacks. And now, man, they are a team to be reckoned with.
The turnover chain, it's back.
Yes.
That was the secret, right?
Yes.
No, a great friend of mine played college football, played in the SEC, is a hospital principal here locally. Right. And I remember Manny Diaz came to the school years ago recruiting. And this guy had played at the high level of football, had coached at the college level briefly. And he talked about how great Manny Diaz was. And he the most impressed by Manny Diaz than any other college football coach he ever met. So am I shocked that Manny Diaz is having success in his hometown of Miami, Florida, where his dad used to be mayor? No, I'm not.
But going from year one to year two, I mean, last year was a train wreck. And the Florida-Miami game to kick off 2019 was very, very difficult to watch because of all the mistakes and the sloppiness. And I believe, if memory serves me correctly, Miami gave up 7 or 8 sacks in that game. So that even for even against an SEC defense, that is really embarrassing for an ACC team. So that is very problematic.
Yeah, well, look at first-year head coaches. I mean, you can go all the way back to Mark Richt. And
yes.
You remember Mark Richt's first year, he had terrible problems with clock management, but he cleared it up and cleaned it up. Yes. You look back at Dan Mullen at Mississippi State. He didn't know how to use his reviews. He lost a game against Houston at home, a homecoming game.
Yes.
Quarterback clearly stayed behind the line, threw a touchdown pass, and the referee said he went beyond the line, and they called the touchdown back. And if Mullen would have reviewed it, they would have won the game. So with Manny Diaz being a first-year head coach and going through the bumps last year, but the successful ones figure it out really quick and turn it around and turn it on very fast.
Okay, we actually have a question that someone, let's see, Glenn Sutherland on Facebook posed to us, and I'm going to actually pop this question up on the screen. And that is a new feature that we can do, is to pop stuff up on the screen for you to see. So I don't know if you can see this or not, but it says, will the SEC have 2, 3, or 4 teams in the playoffs in 2020. What are your thoughts? And then I'll give mine.
Glenn, thanks for the question. And why not, right?
Yeah.
2020, nothing's making sense. um, yeah, there's going to be media backlash. There's going to be a lot of things if the SEC got 3 teams in. But this year, I'm not going to be shocked with anything.
Right.
And I'm also want to reverse that question. And no, I'm not hating on the SEC. I'm an SEC grad. I'm a proud SEC grad.
Me too.
The SEC is going to beat the tar out of each other all season long.
Yes.
There's no off weeks. There's no, Sisters of the Poor of A&M at Shreveport to play this year.
Right.
It's no breaks, cutthroat. It's, all out this year, and it's going to be tough to see anybody go undefeated. Will a team do it? I think so. I think they're there in Tuscaloosa. Don't know. But I'm not going to be shocked if Alabama loses 2 games this year either, or more.
Yes. Here's another question from Brandon Yowler, and he is a Big Blue Nation. What is both of yours take on this year's Kentucky squad, Big Blue Nation? Real quick, before I answer that, I could honestly see, getting back to the playoffs, I honestly feel like that this could be a year that a team like Liberty or BYU or one of the Louisiana, one of those non-power fives could sneak into the playoffs because of, like you said, everybody beating each other up. What do you think about that?
I think Kentucky is one of the greatest stories that people are not talking about. And it kind of enrages me. So, Big Blue Nation, I'm with you. I agree with you. I think Kentucky is a wonderful story. I think it's a great story, and I think it's something that everyone needs to know. I think Stoops is doing a phenomenal job there in Lexington. I think there's nothing but a higher ceiling coming. How high can that ceiling go? We don't know.
Right.
But I definitely think that the consistency of winning year in and year out has only made the program stronger. It's making it better. And props to the administration not getting rid of Stoops after 3 or 4 years. Sticking with him, giving him time to build the program. That used to be a normal thing back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Now, look at Joe Moorhead. 2 years, he's gone.
Yes.
Look at down at Southern Miss a couple of years ago. Coach had 1 year, gone. And he did go on 12. But what Stoops is doing in Lexington is absolutely amazing. I think only bigger things will come. And with the transfer portal fixing to explode in the next 2 years, I think Kentucky is going to heavily benefit and heavily benefit to make a bigger and better run. And I think New Year's Six Bowls might be in the future for the Wildcats.
And they may actually upset Auburn this weekend. I don't want to give away any of my picks or anything, but I really feel like that could be an upset alert for the Auburn Tigers at home because they've been dealing with COVID as well, and they had to miss some practices. There were like 10 players that had to sit out of practice due to the COVID pandemic. So I really feel like that Kentucky might actually shock some people this weekend.
And one quick thing, Stephen, for all the folks watching, if you haven't followed your SEC team to Lexington for that road game, go to Lexington. Lexington is a super fun place. It's a great game day atmosphere at Kroger Field. Head to Lexington, and hopefully you won't get beat up too bad by the Wildcats, and you'll have a good time on the way home.
Right. All right. This question I'm going to this one comes from Landon Tucker, who was a former co-host of mine with the Stingray show when I did it before. And I'm going to let Heath answer this question because it is about Mississippi State.
I see it down there. What's the probability of Mike Leach and the Bulldogs catch the Tigers off guard and pull an upset this Saturday? Crazier things have happened.
Yes.
Is LSU more talented? Yes. Has LSU put all the pieces together? No college football team has put all the pieces together, and especially teams that are playing their first game. With that being said, new coordinators on both teams, a lot of new faces and a lot of skill positions on both teams. It's going to get crazy.
Yes.
Who's got the better quarterback? I think Mississippi State does. Who has the better running back? Mississippi State does. Who's got the better offensive line? I'm going with LSU. Who's got the better receivers? LSU. So that's a 2-2 split there.
Right.
I think it's going to come down to defense, and I think Mississippi State will show flashes of greatness this year on defense with Zach Arnett. The 3-3-5 is my favorite defense, and I love it. But LSU has got tons more talent, and I think they're a little bit better prepared. But if LSU has been on the rubber chicken tour, patting themselves on the back, looking at that ring in the mirror and taking selfies with their championship ring, they might get slapped with it come Saturday night.
I mean,
but I'll tell you my prediction here at the end of the show.
Okay. You never know about what Mike Leach is going to throw out because he may actually have new wrinkles now that he's at a different school, a new school, and Mississippi State. So it's going to be real interesting to see the air raid actually in the SEC because we've all wanted it for so long to see how it's going to go up against, the great defenses of LSU, Auburn, Alabama, and now we're actually going to get to see it right there in Starkville. And I've always been a Mike Leach fan. I felt like that he was done wrong out at Texas Tech. So I hope he does well in Starkville, and I will be keeping my eye on all of the press conferences because you never know what the old pirate is going to say.
Well, Leach has never lost a press conference. We all know that.
Yes.
He's never lost a press conference. He never will.
Yes.
And you have some reporters saying some crazy things that some schools are scared of hiring him for what he might say at a press conference or on Twitter. If you want to believe that, that's fine. You're an American right to believe whatever you want to believe. But with Mike Leach, he is going to throw craziness out there. I went back during the pandemic. I went back and watched the 2018 season of Washington State, watched all their games.
Right.
And he threw a lot of wrinkles. When the ball was on the hash mark, he called it his big gulp offense.
Yeah.
And had all the players line between the hash mark and the sideline and had a receiver snapping the ball at an angle and just going forward. It was running play after running play. So it was very interesting to see the mad genius come up with what he had. So will Leach have something in store for LSU? Absolutely. The other thing on the other side of that, Zach Arnett, no one's talking about Zach Arnett. Zach Arnett was part of the best defense in America last year, and no one's talking about that. Zach Arnett is not some rube that fell off the turnip truck.
Right.
This guy knows what he's doing. He worked under Rocky Long, which is one of the most respected defensive minds ever. And so, Zach Arnett's a young guy, but I tell you what, it's going to be fun. Like I said, I don't think the Mississippi State defense will be up to par. I think they will show flashes of greatness, but I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains this 2020 season.
Yes. And like you said, man, he really needs to get a defense, though, because that's the only thing that's really held him back at Texas Tech and, of course, Washington State was the absence of a defense. And if he could have had that at Texas Tech that year that they knocked off Colt McCoy and the number one Texas Longhorns, they could have actually played for and possibly won. I think the BCS was still active then, so the BCS title.
Yes. A funny story that I heard yesterday, there was a recruit that committed to Mississippi State, a defensive recruit, a cornerback, and they said that Leach gave the speech and the spiel of, do you want to be playing with me or against me of how I run my offense?
Right.
And which I thought was a great recruiting pitch. And he also told them, he said, hey, we're scoring a lot of points. The other team's going to have to throw the ball a lot, and that's going to give you a lot of chances to show yourself and get yourself ready for the league. So
Right.
I thought that was some great recruiting pitches that he gave. Kid committed. Will he sign? We don't know.
Yes. Well, there was another question on Facebook about Clemson because they looked real polished through their first few games, but they really didn't play anybody as they played Wake Forest week 1, yawn, and then I believe it was the Citadel last weekend. So you really don't know until they face teams like Miami and North Carolina before we get to know what Clemson has. And by the way, Clemson actually does play Miami this year in the regular season. So that game could also be one that we see with them in the ACC championship game. What are your thoughts on the Clemson Tigers so far?
Talk about Dabo. I mean, fun to say. Everyone loves Dabo. I think even South Carolina fans like Dabo to a point. I could be
Yes.
wrong on that. Dabo's the kind of guy you wish was your neighbor. You wish he was your crazy uncle. Everyone
Yes.
likes Dabo. Am I betting against Dabo? No.
Right.
Am I going to go against the Tigers? No. Clemson's got it rolling up there. Is the pipeline still pumping? I believe so.
Yes.
I don't think we have anything to worry about as far as scandals with Clemson.
Right.
Of course, that's what makes them scandals is when they catch them off guard.
Yes.
But everything that's going on at Clemson, I think it's on the up and up. I think the world of Dabo, and I think that Clemson's going to be here to stay for a long, long time.
Awesome. Well, are you ready to bring in our first guest on the Stingray show? This guy used to be an Auburn reporter. Now he has moved to 24/7 Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring in the one, the only, Brandon Marcello. And let me go ahead and pop him on here. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing, Stingray?
Doing good. Let me also go ahead and say that the guy in the middle is my co-host, Heath Hopkins. So I will let you guys introduce yourselves real quick.
Hey, Brandon, how are you? Heath Hopkins here in Hernando, Mississippi.
Hey, Heath. How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, brother. How's the weather?
It's okay. We actually got blue skies today. It was really nice weather. Starting to feel like fall where I'm at, and glad to talk to a couple of Mississippi guys. I used to cover Mississippi State back in the day, and in the early days of Dan Mullen, and certainly things have changed quite a bit since I was there.
Yes.
Brandon, I think we might have had some of the same gigs. I covered Mississippi State in the early of the Croom era, so I'm a little bit older. At the end of the Jackie, beginning of the Croom era.
Well, that's awesome. Well, do you miss Auburn, Brandon? Because obviously you have branched out to 24/7 Sports. Do you miss covering the Auburn Tigers?
Yeah, I miss living in Auburn. That really had become home for us over the last 7 years, and we had our first child there, and we bought our first home there, which I never thought I'd do in my entire life, buying a house and putting down roots. But that's what I miss. I miss the community there. But we moved back to our initial home where most of our family's at, so that's really kind of softened the blow. We're in a good spot, and hopefully, with this obvious pandemic, the idea was with this new job, I'd be traveling a lot. So I'd certainly be in Auburn maybe once or twice a year and all across the country, but haven't quite been able to do that yet. And I'm looking forward to the day I get to go back to Auburn, and for that matter, to a lot of other SEC, Big Ten, Pac-12, ACC, and Big 12 schools.
Brandon, let me jump in and ask you a quick question. When you make it back to Auburn, where are you going to eat and what are you eating? Oh,
that's easy. I'm going to the Hound, and I'm having one of their big-ass steaks.
That's awesome.
I'm having the big-ass steak at the Hound, or I'm going to have a buffalo burger.
There you go.
Well, how do you feel like the different conferences have handled the COVID-19 pandemic so far?
Well, I guess history is going to be the best judge. And I think, the Big Ten and Kevin Warren, they've really kind of sided with that and in their explanations. I think the Big Ten has mishandled it by far the worst because they weren't transparent for their reasons for delaying the season. Then things started trickling out, and then you started wondering about the science and other things. But also just the way they handled it. Kevin Warren kind of hid in a bunker, wouldn't talk to anybody while everybody was asking questions. You had Nebraska players suing the Big Ten. You had Big Ten player parents protesting outside the Big Ten office. You had lawyers getting involved, threatening lawsuits, filing open records requests. It was by far the worst mishandling of this whole situation. And people ask me like, well, how's that different from what happened in the Pac-12 and what's going on in the Pac-12? It's a lot different because the Pac-12, the day they announced that they were canceling the fall season, they said, here's a 12-page medical document outlining why we're having to do this. Also, we're not able to even practice football legally in certain locales. For example, California and the state of Oregon, where 6 of their schools are located, they couldn't even have practices. In fact, up until this week, they couldn't have practices, and they're still working on it right now in the Bay Area to be able to do that. So the Pac-12, there's a lot more red tape. Meanwhile, the Big Ten just said, believe us, there's a lot of red tape, and there wasn't really.
Right.
And I think they bungled it from the start. They should have waited. I think the Pac-12 should have waited, but the Pac-12 likes to work in lockstep with the Big Ten because of their tie-ins with the Rose Bowl and that history. But I think the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 made the right decision in saying, let's try to work together and use as much of this runway, as Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, would say, as possible. And that's how we got to this point now where 3 of the 5 Power 5 conferences are going to be playing this weekend, which you asked me that in July. I didn't think we'd be seeing that, to be quite honest, after everything I was hearing. But here we are, because you just never know how testing is going to improve, contact tracing is going to improve, protocols are going to improve, and that's what's happened over the last month, and that's what's paved the way for the SEC to get back on the field.
Heath, do you have a question?
About COVID? No. I'm tired of talking about it. I'm tired of hearing about it.
Me too.
All right. Well, Brandon, who are some of your sleeper teams around the country with all of the Power 5 teams?
That's a great question. I really like Penn State.
Right.
I think that Penn State's a team that could potentially upset Ohio State this year. And if that happens, they'll end up winning the Big Ten championship, in my opinion, if they're able to play most of their games. That's going to be the big question. I mean, what if Ohio State plays 7 games, Penn State plays 6 games? And, there's all kinds of questions there about winning percentage, how you decide the champion, but also, what if that one game that gets canceled is Penn State and Ohio State?
Right.
There's no breathing room there for them to do any bye weeks and make up games like you see in the SEC, ACC, and the Big 12, and that's just a product of the system right now. But I really like Penn State. We'll see. Outside, but that's as far as like college football playoff. I think Notre Dame's not necessarily flying under the radar, but I really like the way they're built. I love their offensive line. I love their tight ends and the way they're utilizing those guys in the run game, but also, of course, in the passing game. But their run blocking is phenomenal. I think Notre Dame's going to be in it, and I think that they could very well potentially upset Clemson. They get Clemson at home. We'll see. I think Clemson's still like 2 steps ahead of everybody other than Alabama right now.
Right.
But, it's going to be fun watching Notre Dame going through the ACC this year. And in my mind, I almost feel like Notre Dame administrators and coaches and players after this season are going to go, you know what? It's kind of fun playing in a conference and playing for a conference championship.
Right.
Maybe we should stick around and do this. And I wouldn't be surprised here in the next 5 years or so, you see Notre Dame as a permanent member of the ACC for football.
Brandon, let's go down this road real quick for a quick second. Does anybody try to lure Notre Dame to their conference?
Has anybody what for Notre Dame? I'm sorry.
Do you think anyone will try to lure Notre Dame to come to their conference after the season?
I think it would be difficult because Notre Dame's had that long working relationship with the ACC to begin with, just with basketball. And so I don't think the Big Ten could come in there and go, anything could happen, I guess. I would think that the only way that would maybe happen for the Big Ten is if they kick Nebraska out, which I think a lot of them want to do right now, and then add Notre Dame, which I think would be a win-win for Nebraska, Notre Dame, and the Big Ten. But I think Notre Dame, they would fit in either conference, the ACC or Big Ten, maybe better in the Big Ten. And boy, would that be an amazing conference if Notre Dame joined the Big Ten. But I think it would make more sense for them with the ACC because they know the inner workings, they know the administrators, they know the athletic directors. It just makes sense.
All right, well, let's go on ahead and talk about some of the SEC matchups this weekend. Are you surprised right now that Kentucky is ranked?
No, I think Kentucky's in a spot now where they should be ranked every other year or so. Mark Stoops has done a phenomenal job. He's gotten the recruits there. Obviously, he's winning there these last 3 to 4 years. And they've got the confidence. I hate the word swagger, but they got the swagger now, the confidence among the players and the coaches to not only be a team that they know can contend against the Floridas of the SECs, but to beat them. And we've seen that, obviously, these last couple of years. And they've won 10 games over the last 2 seasons. They won with a receiver turned quarterback last year. They've got talent, man, and they've got so many returning pieces this year along their offensive and defensive lines that I know Kentucky is not favored in this game at Auburn, but they've got a really, really good shot at knocking off Auburn if their defense plays very well. That's the key to me. I think Kentucky's offense is going to be fine in this game, but if their defense can play very well, they've got a shot at pulling off this upset and moving even further up the rankings, because Auburn is kind of a shaky team to me this season as far as trying to figure out exactly what their identity is going to be defensively and offensively. They lost a lot of pieces. They lost 2 first-round guys along that defensive line. Their entire secondary is gone. They lost 4 of 5 starting offensive linemen and their starting running back. I don't know what Auburn's going to quite look like this season.
So how do you see the Auburn and Kentucky game going? Are you ready to pull the upset against Auburn or no?
I say all that to say this. I think Auburn wins by 10. And I say that because I think that Auburn, what they missed last season offensively, wasn't necessarily kind of amping up the passing game, but to me, the running game has been slow for them the last 2 to 3 seasons. Right. And I think they've got the pieces in the backfield this year. Even though they lost their starter last year, there were better running backs behind him that were just freshmen and younger. They're stacked back there. If they get the running game going, the passing game will come around with it. And listen, you look at Auburn's success over the years. Every year they've been in the SEC championship game or have contended, it's when they've had a 1,000-yard rusher. They haven't had that the last 2 seasons. I think this year they get back to that, and I think they'd be able to grind it out against Kentucky, end up winning and going away in the fourth quarter by about 10.
We have a question on Facebook from Chris King, and I'm going to pop this up here. Can Arkansas win 3 games this year? And it's going to be very difficult for them, and especially when they start off with the Georgia Bulldogs.
3 games is pushing it. I said in the preseason that Arkansas fans should be happy with a 1-9 record.
Right.
Which I know just sounds terrible, but listen, I watched Arkansas in person at least just once last year, but that was enough to me to go, that was the worst Power 5 conference team I saw last year and one of the worst I've seen in my career in person.
Yes.
It was just bad all around. Now, they're going to be better this year. They get an immediate upgrade at quarterback with Felipe Franks. They've got a great running back in Boyd. Their defense just isn't going to be SEC level, and I've got questions about their offensive line. I think if they win 1 or 2 games, that should be viewed as a success, especially with it only being a conference-only schedule, and they've got the toughest schedule in the entire country this year. It's incredible. You open up with Georgia. Wow, thanks. And you close with Alabama. Thanks. If they were to win 2 games, I think that would be rather shocking to me. But they got a long way to go.
When I saw that schedule for Arkansas, the updated schedule, I immediately thought of Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd and Spies Like Us. Thanks for the bruises. You can keep the stool samples. We want to go home now. But here's a fun question, Brandon. Whoever made the schedule at the SEC office, I think they missed a massive opportunity. Let's put Vanderbilt and Arkansas, first game of the season, on Thursday night, because we're all going to watch. We're dying for football, and someone's got to win that game.
I agree. That would have been the thing to do. I'm actually this is a little off topic. We talk about Thursday night football games. The Big Ten is talking about doing Friday night and even some Monday night games. I'm surprised with the SEC wanting to be more flexible along with the Big 12 and the ACC that we haven't started hearing things of like, we're going to try and play a Wednesday game, or a Thursday game, because that takes another day or 2 of testing out of the way, and you're able to maybe get a game in before potentially guys getting sick on Friday and Saturdays. I know that sounds kind of morbid in a way, but if you're trying to get games in, let's move these games around on the calendar a little bit during the week and try to get some in the middle of the week. And I'm kind of surprised that everybody's just trying to stick with the Saturday schedules. I think the Big Ten's kind of got the good idea of let's spread them out. Let's do Monday, Friday, and Saturday games potentially.
All right. Well, what do you think about the Lane Kiffin train at Ole Miss hosting Dan Mullen in Florida?
Well, first off, I haven't fired off an email to compliance at olemiss.edu yet. No, it's an interesting game. Florida should win that one going away. The thing is, I keep hearing that my guy for Ole Miss at quarterback, I think, should be John Reese Plumlee. But I keep hearing it's not going to be him at quarterback. It's going to be Matt Corral, which I'm just not too impressed with his decision making, but also his arm. They've got receivers. It's just that they weren't throwing to them very well last season. They can run the ball. Lane Kiffin comes in, gives them an immediate upgrade with the passing offense. That's what he does everywhere he goes. I think their defense will be okay, especially in the secondary. I just wonder if they're going to be able to fight with the Florida offensive line. I just don't know if that's going to hold up. But, Florida should win comfortably. But one comment from Dan Mullen was interesting to me this week. He says that for this first game, you're not so much concerned about scheme with everything we've been through. You're more concerned about let's just run plays we know we can run.
Right.
And I've never heard Dan Mullen say anything like that before because he's got a bag of tricks that's bigger than anything you'll see on Halloween.
Yes.
And I don't know if I believe him when he says that. I think he's still going to do some unique things. I think he's by far the best offensive coordinator in the SEC. I think he's by far the best quarterbacks coach in the SEC. And I wrote this summer, I think Florida wins a national championship before Georgia does.
Yeah.
I think Florida's closing the gap there. And if Florida can continue to have top 10 recruiting classes the next 2 to 3 years, Dan Mullen's going to have them in the college football playoff here in the next 5 years. And I just don't see Georgia breaking through right now, particularly, I know it's short term, but these next 2 years at quarterback got me worried a little bit at Georgia.
Yes.
Brandon, let me ask you a quick question about Mullen playing Ole Miss here this weekend. Mullen always would take a knee at the end of the game in the Egg Bowls. When he had a chance to put a cheap score up, he would take 2 or 3 knees. He's always taken that out in games. With all the drama over the past few years, if Dan gets to make a statement here, start the season off, does he take that at the end of the game if Florida's running away with it, get a cheap score at the end? I
don't know. To be quite honest, I don't think he would.
I don't think he will either.
Yeah, I just don't think he would. If it was Georgia, oh yeah, he would.
I don't think he would with Georgia.
I think he would. Oh man, I know all about the recruiting battles that Dan and had with Hugh Freeze and even Houston Nutt early in his career and all that. It was dirty back and forth. They didn't like each other. But Georgia and Florida is on a whole nother level as far as just kind of their digs at each other. And they're not so much public as they are private. And I think if Dan was up 2 touchdowns late against Georgia and had a chance to score again instead of taking a knee, he'd do it in a heartbeat.
Brandon, let me ask you this, and I will jump topics, but staying on Dan. Everyone talks about, for both State and Ole Miss, the welcome to the Egg Bowl moment of how serious it really is, and you know how vicious the rivalry is. You've been very outspoken about it and written about it. What was that moment for you, the welcome to the Egg Bowl moment? Like, oh, wow, that was a shot, or, oh, this is deep, or that was just filled with hatred. What was that moment for you?
I'm trying to think of the year. You guys could probably figure it out for me. But the year that State went to Ole Miss, the year or two after Dan Mullen in the locker room said, we're never losing to that team again, Ole Miss kind of crushes them. And Ole Miss decides to play that video over and over again on the Jumbotron near the end of the game with the Price is Right failed trombone music at the end. And the fans were just going nuts and yelling at Mullen and everything. And then the fans started rushing the field and saying things to Mississippi State players. I saw some pushing and shoving that maybe didn't get on TV, but I saw it in person. It was that moment. I knew it was intense, but I guess that first year I was there, it was Houston Nutt's maybe final season, and Nutt was on his way out. It was going to be a blowout. But that next year in Oxford, that was something. That was my moment of, oh my gosh. But you saw it every day, just in recruiting and following recruiting, and the fan bases going at it online. But in person, that's when you really kind of get it.
Well, what do you think about the Tennessee-South Carolina matchup?
It's going to be ugly. Listen, I've told myself I'm not going to complain about any football this year because I love football, and the fact that we're even getting to play it is a privilege at this moment. But that is going to be a bad game. I don't see South Carolina winning that. I don't think that. Listen, we talk about this year and these unprecedented times about how probably no SEC coach is really on the hot seat. And I'd argue that Will Muschamp's on the hot seat no matter what.
Definitely.
Same with Derek Mason at Vanderbilt, because they might not win a game. But I don't see South Carolina winning more than 3 games with their schedule this season. And Tennessee, the way they finished last year with the confidence they had, a senior quarterback who's been there, I think this is his 28th year at Tennessee, Jared. And I just think Tennessee goes in there and wins it just off of, 1, the talent level, but 2, the experience they've got. I just think South Carolina really – they've got a shot. Every team's got a shot. But that's like one of those games where it was almost a no-brainer to me as soon as I saw it. I went, yeah, Tennessee's going to win on the road.
Do you think Colin Hill can adapt to the SEC speed?
Yeah, that's a big question. I don't follow South Carolina closely, obviously, but I was kind of shocked when I saw his name announced. I just kind of assumed Helinski would get it, but we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, the coaches have seen something with that. I've heard Will Muschamp is really focused on the quarterback position this year in practices, standing behind him and everything, kind of watching things, even though he's a defensive guy. We'll see, but he's not necessarily going against a Tennessee defense that's going to light the world on fire. So maybe we'll get some early peeks of what he's capable of. But I'm telling you, I think that Tennessee offense is just going to steamroll South Carolina's defense.
What do you think is going to be the biggest difference on that Tennessee defense from last year to this year?
Well, 1, forcing turnovers. That's going to be a big thing for them. Secondly, like I said, I just think that the confidence level for them after last season, winning the last 6 games, and doing so by winning by defense, holding teams to 2-3 touchdowns, I think that helps them going into this year. Plus with Jeremy Pruitt, people always compare him to Kirby Smart because of their times at Alabama, but Pruitt's one of the smartest schematic coaches that I know in the SEC. And when it comes to defense, he's one of the better ones alongside Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. And I have no doubt in my mind that Tennessee defense is going to be pretty good this year.
All right. Well, I have 2 questions left for you. 1, how do you see the defending national champions faring against the air raid of Mike Leach in Tiger Stadium?
Well, listen, Mississippi State's going to break a lot of records this year. I mean, Mike Leach does that everywhere, even in the first years. But you go back through history, of course, and see those first games, and when they're trying to break in a new quarterback or whatever, there are struggles. I just think that LSU, it's going to be one of those things where it's going to be like they've got more talent and they win. But it might very well be a game where LSU's up 28-3 in the fourth quarter, and then Mississippi State scores 2 or 3 touchdowns just to make it interesting near the end. I think that's going to be the type of offense you're going to see early in the season from Mississippi State. I don't think they're going to start off hot in a lot of games as they get things going. Having said that, I think KJ Costello is the perfect quarterback for them. They just need some upgrades at receiver. Kylan Hill will probably end up being the second leading receiver on the team, despite playing running back. I'm very interested to see what they do with him in open space. That guy is amazing. And with him in open space catching the ball, who knows? But LSU's just a little bit more talented. Sure, they're breaking in a lot of new guys after all those players, 16 or whatever, went to the NFL draft. But they've got the system. They know what they're doing. Yeah, it's been going on for several years under Ed Orgeron, and I mean, listen, we all know that it's a major culture change when you bring in Mike Leach to any system, and it's going to take some time at Mississippi State to get it to the point where he wants to win, 9 games a year and maybe contend in the SEC West. I just don't see them pulling off the upset this Saturday. But they're my team in the SEC this year, along with Ole Miss, that is going to upset someone at some point. One, because of their offenses and their head coaches. 2, they're going to catch a team that's going to be missing some key parts at some point because of COVID and because of their scheme being adaptable, where if they're losing some guys, they just plug and play. They're gonna upset someone at some point this year.
Right. And finally, who do you have winning the SEC East and the West, and ultimately the SEC and going to the playoff, representing the SEC?
Let's see. Well, here's my thinking. This is what happened. In the summer, I had Florida winning the East. Then I switched it to Georgia. And then I kept it there, despite hearing that their offense has been struggling in practices. But the reason why that I kept Georgia up there is because I was being told that defense might be the best defense Kirby Smart has ever coached, including his time at Alabama. Then Jamie Newman leaves. Yes. And I'm going, I don't know now. So I'm leaning toward Florida again.
Right.
Just because, to me, the teams with the better quarterbacks win championships. Defense wins championships, but as we've seen over the years, the teams with the best quarterbacks are the ones that win. Yeah. The SEC, the Big 12, all that. And I'm going to go with Kyle Trask of Florida winning the East. They're going to meet Alabama out of the West. And I'll say this about Alabama. They're going to chew up everybody in the SEC this year. I don't see them winning a game by less than 10 points this year. I think they're going to absolutely bludgeon people. I think they are just absolutely angry there. I don't understand some of these comments from people questioning Mac Jones and how maybe they should play Bryce Young at quarterback. Mac Jones, to me, is just about a step and a half below Tua. I think he's very, very good. Their defense returns a lot of players who were injured last season. And get this, they ranked 12th or 13th in the nation in defense last season. That's the worst defense Saban's had in over a decade.
Wow.
They're going to be better defensively. Yeah. And they were right there anyway last season, despite that. They're going to win going away in the SEC West because LSU's taking a big drop off. I'm not certain about Auburn. I don't believe in A&M taking that next step under Kellen Mond.
Right.
I just don't see it. And so I just think Alabama is going to crush people. And the closest game this year they're going to play is Georgia.
Here's a quick question for you, Brandon. Going back to Mississippi State and LSU. Last year we saw Joe Burrow get pants in that game. Do we see Miles Brennan get pants and have his pants pulled out on national television?
It's if you don't have that happen, are you really an LSU Tiger? If you don't show your ass.
You said it, not me, brother.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I love LSU. I love Ed Orgeron. In fact, his book. Where's his book? I got an advanced copy of his book around here somewhere. Ed O and what he's done there is tremendous, and I think a lot of us agree on this point now. But when he was the interim coach at USC, he should have been promoted to be the full-time guy. He had changed his life, but also changed the way he's coaching. And I'm reading this book, and it goes into detail about what exactly he did change as just from the coaching profession, and it's really quite amazing how much his mind changed from his failure at Ole Miss. But maybe we'll see some. Listen, Mike Leach is involved. Ed Orgeron's involved.
Yes,
something nuts is going to happen.
Is that a Saturday Night Live skit? If those two had a conversation, is that a Saturday Night Live skit?
I would love to hear them discuss philosophy or something together.
Oh, speaking of philosophy, this will be my last question for you, Brandon. Ed Orgeron, and I'm not making any slight or punches at Coach O, never been accused of being the smartest man in the room, but can he outsmart every man in the room? I think the answer is yes.
Oh, dude, absolutely. He's been doing it for most of his career. I've heard stories about him on the recruiting trail where he's literally like been told no several times by the player and player's parents, and he's still like kind of sneaking around, not giving up, and he ends up getting the guy. That guy works harder and to kind of overcome, things that people perceive about him, which is what's happened in the past with him when he's recruiting folks, and the same with some of his coaching colleagues. And I think for that very fact, yeah, he's the type of guy that would find a way to get it done. If you put him in a room, say at SEC spring meetings, and they had to come up with some ideas, let's say they had to sit there and they're like, okay, we got 3 options of playing this season. We're going to do an 8-game schedule, a 10-game schedule, or a 12-game schedule. How do we figure this out? And I think he'd already have an idea of exactly what he wanted and would present it. The guy has become a great CEO, more than as a great of a coach. He's become a great CEO, and that's exactly what you need at a program like LSU or in Alabama.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. And since you came on, is there anything that you would like to promote that's coming out that you're doing, like an article or something, so that we can help you get viewership as well?
Just check us out at 247sports.com, our national team, which we've built up really since the pandemic started. It was weird timing, but our national team has done some tremendous analysis and some great stories these last few months. And, of course, as the season starts and going into this big weekend with the SEC starting, we got some great pieces on the new era of LSU and the new era for Georgia at quarterback as well. What exactly is Georgia getting at quarterback? Yes. Some interesting stories. Check out at 247sports.com.
Are you going to any games this weekend?
I am, but where?
Yes.
That's the question.
I got you. Okay.
I just hope you make it to Auburn to get that steak.
I wish. It's going to be a good game, ranked versus ranked matchup. But it's not Auburn. It's not in Alabama. But it's a game. Well,
man, be safe in your travels, and you're welcome on the show at any time, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Stingray. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Heath.
All right, man.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right, and that was Brandon Marcello. We want to thank him for joining on. And actually, Heath, people are noticing on Facebook that you are actually on here. So there is a let me see. I'm going to pop this up real quick. And can you see that?
That is, I believe he is in the House of Representatives in the state of Mississippi. That is Scott Griffin, and we had a nickname for Scott back in Starkville. Me and him have actually been to the Olympics together in 1996. We had just left Centennial Park. We were heading back to the hotel, and we met we heard this big boom, and we were at the car, and we got in the car, and we're driving back to the hotel. We were passing all these cops and ambulances and fire trucks, and we didn't know what was going on. And when we get back to the hotel, we noticed that the bomb had gone off in Centennial Park. But yeah, it was a crazy. We were dead tired. It was 3 or 4 in the morning. I can't remember what time it was, but we were both dead tired. And then when we found out that there was a bomb that went off, and then we couldn't go to sleep. We stayed up watching the news coverage all night. But Scott, we had a nickname for Scott. Claude D. Peckerwood was the name of Scott Griffin. And now he's in the House of Representatives, I don't believe he's in the state Senate. I believe he's in the House of Representatives representing South Mississippi. So, Scott, how you doing, bud?
Thank you for watching. And I want to go on ahead real quick, Heath, and bring in JTG, our Big Ten correspondent. We had you and I talked to him yesterday on the test run, and he actually played football for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and he is actually going to be our Big Ten correspondent. So without further ado, here is JTG, and I will let him introduce himself. I love it.
How you doing?
Awesome.
Jeffrey.
I'm a little bit bashful, so I thought I'd put my helmet on. Heath, just to date myself right here, you see the logo? So that's the
I
Big
do see the
Ten.
logo. I do see the
Yep.
logo. You guys can't count to 10, obviously.
For a long time, we haven't been able to.
Right.
So that's the Big Ten with the 11 in there.
I see it.
I'm so old that there's 3 more teams in the conference now than the last time I put the pads on.
Wow.
Oh man.
That's exactly right. And then I want to give a shout out to you can see here. This is my 8-bit Bo Jackson. So that's a shout out. This is one of my favorite shirts. That's a shout out to some Auburn fans out there. And then
Awesome.
This is Clyde Mays bourbon. That's what we're drinking right now. Free plug. That's an Alabama bourbon. So
That's
a
awesome.
little bit of SEC flair up
Yes.
here in Minnesota.
You got all kinds of tricks up your sleeve, Jeffrey.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of the Big Ten, how do you feel that the Big Ten handled the whole off-season issue with COVID?
About like my 4-year-old handles a ice cream cone when I give it to him and ask him to walk across the room.
Yes.
In all honesty, I think the first plan that was put out, okay, so this is, way back August 6th, I think it was, when they had a proper 10-game schedule with 2 bye weeks in the kind of a third and 2/3 of the way through. If they would have stuck with that, I think that was the best plan that they had in place. And I think it maybe even could have shown out to be the best plan in place across college football. But 6 days later, after putting that schedule out, they scrapped the whole thing. Kevin Warren, the commissioner, went in a bunker. We don't know where he was at for about 40 days.
With Joe Biden.
Exactly. And then finally he came out, and now we have the schedule we have now. I would say at this point, especially after the abyss we went through, for about 40 days there, at least now the Big Ten looked at enough data and came around. We're happy to have Big Ten football back.
Awesome. Well, speaking of Big Ten, who are some of your sleeper teams in that conference? Could Minnesota be one, or are they going to take a step back this year?
Yeah, Minnesota is an intriguing team. Obviously, they kind of came out of nowhere last year to win 11 games, beat the aforementioned Auburn in their bowl game to cap off a really good year. I mean, I would assume a lot of SEC fans were surprised by the physicality of that Minnesota team. So I don't know if I can necessarily call them a sleeper because, they awoke last year already. I'm not 100% sure how confident I am in Minnesota because they weren't one of the teams that were exactly screaming to have Big Ten football brought back. And I've also got some concerns with their defense. With that being said, with Rashad Bateman coming back, that looks like he is coming back. He unportaled himself, if you will, and is going to play. And then Tanner Morgan, the quarterback, he was probably the second or third best quarterback in the Big Ten. He's back. So you expect Minnesota to be strong, but I also wouldn't be totally shocked if they took a step back this year as well.
Right. Well, I do have a question about Michigan State, the coach. Obviously, they have not done very well as of late. Is he, along with Coach Harbaugh, both on the hot seat at both of their institutions?
I don't believe at all. I mean, with Mel Tucker, Michigan State coach, I mean, this is his first time in East Lansing.
Right.
And considering all of the, crazy stuff that we've gone through, I think it would take a 0-9 year plus off-season issues for Mel Tucker to be gone. So he's going to be totally safe. Jim Harbaugh, Michigan is what Michigan is. Like we kind of talked about yesterday on our podcast, which, by the way, is the Eyes on Big podcast, self-plug there. We call Harbaugh khaki pants. We get a kick out of khaki pants. I'm not a Michigan State or Ohio State fan either, so maybe that plays into it. I think Harbaugh is a good coach. I might be a little bit out of the norm for somebody that feels that way that's not a Michigan fan. I don't think he's gotten enough credit to a certain degree on what he's done because Michigan took a dip before he got there. But you honestly have to look back over the last 20, 25 years of Michigan, and you really come to the conclusion that this is Michigan. They are basically a 9 to 10 win team, sometimes 11. And I don't know if you can fire a guy for not getting over that hump, which pretty much is Ohio State. That's the hump we're talking about.
Jeffrey, here's a fun question. Going back to khaki pants. What's a very typical weekend for Mr. Khaki Pants, Coach Khaki Pants? How does he spend an off weekend having fun?
I think he probably catches some Judge Judy on TV. He kicks back with a glass of whole milk. Don't you dare give him skim or 2% milk. He ain't going to drink it. He's
all the way.
Going to read a good war book, I would assume, and that's going to be his weekend. That's probably what he's been doing the past 2 months or so. If
he binge watches a show, what is he watching?
I mean, it really is Judge Judy. That's his. He's gone public with that's his show.
Well, let me also ask you about another coach that I think could potentially be getting on the hot seat or his seat getting warmer is Jeff Brom at Purdue, because they really haven't progressed under him yet, and injuries derailed them last year. Where do you see them ending up at the end of the season?
That's a great question. They are an enigma wrapped in a riddle for me. I have a ton of respect for Jeff Brom. I think he's a good coach. There is no doubt Purdue looks better than what they did. I mean, we're talking 10, 15 years of awful football out of Purdue, and they have definitely looked a lot better. There's no doubt that he can develop a passing attack. He's shown he can do that even with a third-string quarterback. I have yet to see the whole roster come together under Jeff Brom. Right. I think he's more of an offensive coordinator than he is an entire CEO. So first year 7-6, second year 6-7 with the bowl loss. Last year 4-8, like you pointed out, very astute. A lot of injuries that they had with that. With that being said, I would say this is an interesting year for Jeff Brom. But again, we are talking disastrous type of results in order for Jeff Brom to get fired. They just signed the cat to whatever that contract was, but now ain't the time for universities to be paying out coaches' salaries after what these athletic departments have gone through. So I think Jeff Brom is going to be around for quite some time.
Well, do you feel like that Ohio State is still the team to beat, or is there another team like maybe Wisconsin that could sneak up and possibly beat them, or maybe your Iowa team?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of skipped over, but I think two sleepers that I would put in are Indiana in the East,
okay, oh, wow,
and Iowa in the West. Now, if you mean that I think it's a sleeper to win the Big Ten, Indiana's not winning the Big Ten.
Right.
They're not coming. I'm more of a sleeper team that could, win more games than you think they would. Kind of the same thing with Iowa. I would give them more of a puncher's chance than I would certainly Indiana. But we all know who is at the top of the mountain. It is Ohio State. One thing I think I'd like to say is I've heard a lot of times where national writers, people with Twitter accounts, they will compare Ohio State to Clemson, as far as how they look to the rest of the conference. That I do not believe in at all. I think Penn State is a very close runner-up to Ohio State right now for roster talent and just overall coaching. That has been a very solid program under James Franklin. I would say one that doesn't get nearly enough respect nationally. And then right behind them, Wisconsin. So, I mean, we saw Wisconsin battle Ohio State in the Big Ten championship deep into the second half. Somehow that's kind of forgotten, So there is one team at the top and then 2 teams right behind them in Penn State and Wisconsin.
All right. Well, let's get into this kind of conspiracy theory that we talked about yesterday. That, of course, with the COVID pandemic, Big Ten says no football. Nebraska comes out and says, we want to look elsewhere. We want to play football and we're going to elsewhere. Then the Big Ten comes back and says, we're playing football, but here in Nebraska, we're going to slap you back into place. Here is your first game at Ohio State. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
so we got the Nebraska fan base, which is the Tennessee fan base of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And by the way, you look at their history back all the way to the late 90s. It's kind of crazy how much it lines up. Anyways, I should shout out that I am an Iowa fan. So by nature, I am not a Nebraska fan. That's kind of read into us. So I try to stay as neutral as I can with that. One thing I would say with the, schedule conspiracy theory, I don't think you have to put a tinfoil hat on to draw a conclusion there. With that being said, there are teams that are typically viewed as consistent crossovers from east to west. For whatever reason, Ohio State is that crossover for Nebraska. They were already on the schedule 2 schedules ago and 1 schedule ago. So it's not that surprising to see Ohio State there on their schedule as well. The real crazy one is that they picked up Penn State, which I've already said I think is the second best team in the Big Ten. So if there's a conspiracy theory with Nebraska in their schedule, it would be with that Penn State game.
Right.
Another thing, too, is look at the first 4 games that Nebraska has. Ohio State, Wisconsin, a little bit of a break with Northwestern, and then Penn State. That's where the conspiracy theory comes on, because that is a murderer's row for almost anybody, let alone Nebraska, who hasn't been to a bowl game in 3 years.
Sounds like the SEC West to me.
Oh, sure.
I do need to also ask you, first off, Heath, do you have any other questions about the Big Ten?
Let's go dumpster diving for a second. Who are going to be the worst teams this year in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because we know that the Big Ten East gets the most press, right? Because of Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and they deserve it. I get it. I mean, traditionally and even recent history, they deserve it. One thing I'd like to point out is just how not good, and I think it's even fair to say awful, the Big Ten East is once you get underneath Indiana. Because I think Indiana is still a very good team. I mean, that's a team we saw take, Tennessee to the wire, should have won that bowl game last year. Rutgers is awful. I think they might be a little bit better. Maryland is getting worse. They are one of the worst coach teams in the country.
Worse than their uniforms?
That too. Those helmets are disgusting. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
Those helmets break Twitter every time, though.
Oh, for sure. And then a recent entry into the awfulness of the Big Ten, of the cellar of the Big Ten East, is Michigan State. Michigan State's been a very, very strong program, obviously, for the past 10 years. They're going through just a different type of deal right now with the changing coaching, timing up with COVID. Same thing that can apply to Rutgers as well. I honestly think Michigan State and Rutgers are going to start moving the needle up soon, but for 2020, not so much. And then comparatively speaking, if you compare it to the Big Ten West, which obviously I have, a strong connection to, I think the Big Ten West is disparaged way more than it should be. Wisconsin is proven to be a very strong program. Iowa has proven to be a very strong program. Minnesota had a good year. Nebraska has a great history. Even when you get down to Purdue, Illinois, and Northwestern, typically those teams are the type of teams that are going to play a solid game. Okay, Northwestern was really bad last year. They had a historically bad offense last year, but typically speaking, Pat Fitzgerald puts a pretty good team on the field. The Big Ten West maybe, definitely lacks the high-end talent, but there's no pushover in that division.
Well, do you ultimately see Ohio State actually challenging for and winning the national championship this year?
Yes, I do. I know there are a lot of Penn State, Michigan, maybe Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska fans that don't want me to say what I'm going to say, but it is hard for me to not picture Ohio State going at the very least 8-1, and I think 9-0 in the conference this year. Vegas has their 9-game over/under set at 8.5 this year, so they agree with me. After that, I think we all saw the Ohio State team in the playoffs last year. That there was definitely 3 top teams in the country: LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State. There was a big drop-off, I believe, to Oklahoma for that 4th team in the rest of the country. You got a big core of that Ohio State team coming back. They don't they just refill the talent. I mean, it's Ohio State. And on top of it, you have Justin Fields coming back, who is, I believe, the only quarterback in the country that can challenge Trevor Lawrence for the number 1 draft pick next year. He is an absolute difference maker. The only thing that gives me pause with Ohio State is my guy J.K. Dobbins being gone. I don't think people understood how much he meant to that offense last year. He was a weapon both in the running game and the passing game. But it's Ohio State. You would tend to believe they will have a guy to fill that position, whether it be Trey Sermon, who transferred over from Oklahoma, or Master Teague, who is coming off an injury. We're not real sure about that. But it's Ohio State. We think they're going to be in good shape, and I would be shocked if they didn't, let alone make the college football playoff, but make some noise in the playoff as well.
Right.
You don't think Uncle Rico is better than Justin Fields?
But don't sleep on Penn State. I think if Sean Clifford, Penn State's quarterback, can take a jump up, that team is easily as talented enough on defense. I think they have maybe the top 2 or 3 front 7 in all the country. They have enough talent if they can get their quarterback to play better to make some noise as well.
Right.
2-part question for you, Jeffrey. Does Urban Meyer ever come back to the Big Ten?
I don't think so. Ohio State was his dream job. I'm also weird in that I'm just not that big of an Urban Meyer hater, even when he was, in the midst of stuff at Ohio State. I think Ohio State was the dream job. Do I think that means he doesn't come back at all to college football? No, but he's Urban Meyer. He will pick exactly where he wants to come back. My personal, just throwing out there, the only place I would ever see him coming back would be USC.
Wow, I would throw in Notre Dame as well. That's just me.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame's possible, but I think he maybe was. It's possible. That's definitely possible.
I know you're a foreigner to us folks in the South, as you live there in the north of Minnesota, but there's a big conspiracy that when Nick Saban calls it quits, whenever that might be, that the first call is to Urban. I don't know if that's the case or not, but is that a match made in heaven or not?
The old saying is, don't be the guy that follows the guy. Be the guy that follows the guy that follows the guy. I don't think Urban's either one of those guys. It's just he doesn't need to ride on anybody's coattails. He is the coattails. I just don't see him going to Alabama.
If he ever returned to the Big Ten, who's he returning to?
Not Michigan, I'll tell you that much. I just don't. I can't even throw a team out there. I just don't see it.
I got you. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on. You've been really insightful with the Big Ten, and hopefully before the season actually starts, we can have you back on to discuss a few of the key matchups in Week 1. But before we let you go, is there anything else you would like to plug so that some of our viewers and listeners can come over and listen to Big Ten Talk?
Yeah, so on Twitter, I am Jeffrey the Greek, at Jeffrey the Greek. My co-host is Big Kurt. That's B1GKURT. I'm sure tons of people in SEC country are dying for Big Ten content. I mean, that makes the most sense.
You never know.
You never know. I will say this. If you are a person that likes to find a angle on the lines on the games. We definitely go over those with the Big Ten Conference. So, come for the Big Ten lines, stay for the, funny conversations between Kurt and I. And with that being said, LSU, Mississippi State over under 57 and Bama, Missouri over under 56.5. Take the unders all day long in those two games. You heard it here first.
Okay. All right, man. Well, thank you for your time, and we will see you on the flip side.
All right. Go Hawks.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Well, man, that was awesome. I really enjoyed that. Both of them had great takes, didn't they?
They did. I wish I had taken some allergy medicine before I came home. My eyes are killing me. I've been trying not to rub them, but I've been doing it for about the past half hour.
Oh, man, I'm sorry about that.
It's all your fault, Stingray. All your fault.
All right, so are you guys ready to pick some games this weekend?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, now if you see me looking down, I'm going to have to look at my trusty cell phone here for the games. And next week I will hopefully have graphics for all of the games that we're going to pick. But I just didn't have time to do it for this show. But there's actually a game starting tonight. It is going to be, give me just a second.
As you get in a second, a shout out to Scotty the Body Jones down in Hattiesburg. I see him here on Facebook. Give me a shout out. Scott, I think you're going to be a dad 5 times over. Congratulations, brother. You beat me in the Father Olympics 5-4.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. For some reason, okay, hold on. Here we go. Okay, so tonight, for week 4, now, of course, this is week 4 for other teams, but it's week 1 for the SEC. Tonight at 6:30 on ESPN, we have an in-state battle of the UAB Blazers, 1-1, going down to South Alabama, and UAB is only a 1-point favorite in that matchup.
I like UAB. I mean, we know all the drama that happened with everything with their program and being shut down for a year and all the craziness. And Timmy Brando talked about how Bear Bryant Jr. couldn't stand UAB and was just upset with the entire university. And you don't know about it, Google it. There's a little podcast that Timmy Brando goes through all that drama step by step back in the day. South Alabama, phenomenal program. Well, let me rephrase that, up and down program. They've shown some flashes. Other times they just kind of disappear. But with that being said, hey, they got a win at USM. Yes. UAB off to a 1-1 start. I don't know who's going to win. I have done zero research on that game, but I am going to watch it. But if I had to pick, I'll go with UAB.
I'm going to say South Alabama because they're at home and their wide receiver is a stud. He really took Southern Miss's DBs to the woodshed. So I'm going with the home team of South Alabama. And speaking of the up and down program, let's not forget South Alabama the year after Dak, the game 1 after Dak left Starkville,
right.
Came into Starkville and knocked off Dan Mullen. And when yes, and the only game I've ever seen Dan wear shorts in was that one, and he got beat.
When's anytime you've seen a college football head coach wearing shorts on the sideline?
I know. It's ridiculous. But, man, I will tell you, though, I don't blame him because it was really excruciatingly hot that day.
I was there, and it was hot. I would have given someone $100 if they challenged me to the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Yes. So, but yeah, South Alabama, they knocked off Dan Mullen and Mississippi State, and that was right when they were a new program. And that was back in 2017, I believe. So
I've got too many kids. I can't remember dates anymore.
All right, let's go to another matchup, and this one is for Friday. It is Middle Tennessee, which is 0-2 at Texas San Antonio. And this game is going to be tomorrow night on the CBS Sports Network. I will take the team out of Conference USA. I will take the Roadrunners of Texas San Antonio.
I actually like that pick. Fun fact of the day, for everyone watching us, and Stephen knows my pain. We have just moved. I've been in my new house here very briefly. My office and my life is in boxes. They're hanging my TV as we speak. I don't know if you hear drilling in the background. I do. Shout out to John Farmer and his group and men in there working for me. But I do like UTSA. I do like the Roadrunners tonight or for the game.
I like the UTSA as well. Okay, Saturday, we're actually going to go with the Florida Gators and Dan Mullen facing off against the new era under Lane Kiffin, his first game as the head coach of Ole Miss. I think Florida is way too much. I think Florida is going to win this game going away. I agree with Brandon Marcello, and I like Dan Mullen to roll in this game in Oxford.
If Ole Miss gets in a rhythm early, and I think that's not out of the question, if Lane Kiffin's got some tricks up his sleeve, and we all know that he does, if Ole Miss gets rolling early, I think that could be a game for a little while. I think the second half is where that game might get a little boring.
Yes.
I think Lane Kiffin's going to be very successful in Oxford. I think he's going to build a program in Oxford and not just put together a team for a run. I think they're going to do it the right way, which might take a little bit longer. And with all the COVID craziness, I think that only helps him and that philosophy. But I think that philosophy of building for the long term is the right thing to do in Oxford, and I think it's big. But come this weekend, I think Dan and the Gators, if Lane is the train, the Mullen moped is going to ride a whole lot longer, harder, and stronger in Oxford.
Yes. All right, the next game is going to be, let me roll the video for you as we roll on through the picks, and it is actually going to be Kentucky and Auburn, and of course, this was the game, Kentucky and Auburn a couple of years ago. What do you think about the Kentucky-Auburn matchup with the ranked Kentucky team going down to the Plains to take on the Tigers and Bo Nix?
I have gone back and forth on this game a trillion times. I think Kentucky has the horses to do it. I think Kentucky can do it. I think Kentucky gets in their own way at times and keeps them from winning. I think about that Florida game a couple of years ago when Michael Wayne was still at Florida, and they left the guy wide open twice there for the easy touchdown. Just the mental breakdowns. And we've seen Kentucky over and over have a chance. They even played Georgia a couple of years ago for a shot with the SEC title to go to Atlanta. And then, things didn't turn out well. I think if Kentucky can get out of their way mentally, I think big things can happen for them. Auburn, on the other hand, Gus Malzahn, they're going to play fast. That's going to be crazy. He's going to scheme. Tempo. I have gone back and forth on this game, and I keep trying to figure out which defense is better. And I don't know which one is. I mean, I sit there and I easily think, well, Auburn's clearly got the better defense. And then I was like, Kentucky is bringing back more. So, I don't know. It's a toss-up. But I will say this. If it comes down to a field goal, Carlson, I think, is the better kicker for Auburn. I think special teams will be better for Auburn. Auburn's playing at home. I'm going to give it to Auburn. I'm giving the edge to Auburn. If Auburn wins this game by 28, I'm not going to be totally shocked. But if Kentucky wins this game by 21, I'm not going to be shocked either. But I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers.
I'm going with Kentucky because Terry Wilson is actually back. And I think Mark Stoops is actually going to start getting the passing game going, which they lacked last year because they really had a wide receiver taking snaps and running the ball. So I think that the Terry Wilson gets the offensive mojo going again for Kentucky, and I think they are a very dangerous team in the SEC East.
One last thing, Mini Benny. Chris Rodriguez, the running back for Kentucky, the backup running back. He had a huge season, I believe, 2 years ago, got injured last year, and things have just kind of been up in the air. If Kentucky gets depth and they start running the ball and the road graders up front start paving the way, don't be shocked if the backup running back for Kentucky has more rushing at the end of the night than the starter.
Right. All right, the next game, and I need to also say that the Kentucky-Auburn game is going to be at 11 a.m. on Saturday on the SEC Network, and Auburn is a 7.5-point favorite. All right, the next game is going to be a ranked team versus ranked team. Louisville, which just lost to the U, going into Pittsburgh and Heinz Field to take on the Pitt Panthers. Pitt is currently 2-0. That game is at 11 a.m. on the ACC Network. And actually, Pitt is currently favored to win that game by 2 points.
Last year, Louisville looked so good at the end of the season. They won the Music City Bowl. That team was just clicking. They really peaked toward the end of the year. I'm not going down this road because I don't like mixing politics and sports, but all the stuff going on in Louisville this week has got to be a distraction to that football team.
Yes.
And maybe getting on the road is the best thing for them. That might be the absolute best thing for them to have a great game. I don't know.
Right.
But if I had to guess, I'm going with Pitt.
I'm actually going with Pitt with you there. So I like the Pitt Panthers. All right, next up is going to be Georgia Tech at Syracuse. And actually, Georgia Tech was one of my surprise teams that I actually forgot to pick and tell you about. The quarterback and running back duo is going to be an amazing feat coming later on because both of them are freshmen. Now, of course, they beat Florida State early on week 1, and then they lost to Central Florida last week in Atlanta at Bobby Dodd Stadium. But they actually, played Central Florida a pretty decent game at 2:30 on ABC last week. I was able to watch a little bit of that, and so Jeff Collins has things rolling again after the disaster which Paul Johnson left with the triple option there. So I'm going Georgia Tech, and I'm going Georgia Tech big in this one.
Jeff Collins got the juice. Juice Collins.
Yes.
Wreck 'em. Georgia Tech. I like Georgia Tech. I think this might be somewhat of a special season. I know the season's crazy. It's 2020. I'm not saying they're going undefeated.
Right.
But I think the wreck is going to shock some people all season long.
All right, and once again, on the schedule, Notre Dame, Wake Forest, both those games, that game has been postponed because of COVID issues for Notre Dame. So that game will not be played. It will be made up on December the 12th, the weekend before the ACC title game. All right,
I'll go and get my pick in now, Notre Dame.
Yeah, Wake Forest is pretty bad. All right, next up is going to be a team that has not played yet, Florida International against Liberty University, the Flames, which actually Hugh Freeze coaches at. They're 1-0, coming off a huge win against Western Kentucky last weekend. This game is not on TV, but Liberty currently is a 7.5-point favorite. I will go with Liberty in this game.
Don't know much about either one of those teams, but I do know about Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze teams come to play, even when he was coaching at Jackson, Tennessee, at Bethel College. Those teams were very prepared, and they made headlines. And so we've seen him progress his career in and out of the SEC and now at Liberty. Hopefully back to Hattiesburg one day soon. But I like Hugh Freeze. I like the Flames, and I would not be shocked if they win it by more than 7.
I know they're a really good football team. And teaser alert: stay for the end of the show because we have a huge announcement coming up. All right, next up is going to be Tulane 1-1 at a reeling Southern Miss program. That game is not on TV. It is at 1:30, and Tulane is a 3.5-point favorite. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I hate to do this, but with the disaster that happened last weekend, obviously, Southern Miss was up by 17 on Louisiana Tech and let them come all the way back and beat them. I think that loss translates into another loss this week. I'm going with Tulane, and actually that game is an old rivalry between Southern Miss and Tulane, but I'm actually going with the road team, the team from New Orleans, going up to Hattiesburg and getting the win at the Rock, Tulane.
Well, the fun thing is you can get on your bicycle and ride to that game if you're a Tulane fan.
Yes.
It's not that far away. But how much I want Southern Miss to turn it around. I'd like to see them turn it around. They've got to show it to me first.
Yes.
If I'm picking with my heart, I'm picking Southern Miss. But Tulane, I don't know. Tulane hasn't been a powerhouse in a really long time. If there's a chance for someone to turn it around, it's right now for Southern Miss against a team like Tulane. It's the absolute best chance for them to turn it around. And are they aware of that? I don't know.
And Tulane lost by 24 unanswered points last week by Navy. So they're reeling as well coming into this game. Tulane was up 21-0 at the half, and Navy came back and scored 24 unanswered to win the game on a walk-off field goal.
Let's just hope that we get a good game out of this and not a boring.
Yes.
If this is a 10-7 game, you can mail it in for both teams for the year.
Right.
I really hope Southern Miss comes out and shows a lot of fight. And that will say a lot about where their program is. That will say a lot for the next coach coming in, because there might be some coaches that watch that game and say, I'm not taking this job. So I hope that Southern Miss realizes the situation that they're in, that you're not only playing for this team now, you're not only playing for your interim coach now, you're not only playing for your student body now, but you're playing for the future of your program.
Yes.
So with all that being said, I just can't pick Southern. I want to, but I just can't right now.
Right.
Go with the Greenway.
Yep. We are saving the 2:30 matchup for the last pick, since you are a Bulldog fan. So I just wanted to throw that one at you. Next up is going to be 2:30 on Fox, and this one actually might be a good measuring stick for where the Longhorns are, because they go into Lubbock to take on Texas Tech, which week one for them struggled and barely beat Houston Baptist, a team that I'd never heard of before. So we're going to find out what Texas really has when they go on the road to take on the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. How do you see this one?
I got family in Lubbock. Get your shooters up. Got to get shooters up.
Yes.
So I'm so tired of everyone saying Texas is back. Texas is back. Texas is not back. Texas is not back. And let's face it, before Mac Brown, Texas wasn't back, and Mac Brown came in, and everyone kept talking about how he kept having disappointing seasons over and over. It took him forever to win it. And is Texas the most overrated program in America? It's in the conversation. It's easily in the conversation.
I would say Notre Dame is over them, though.
I would agree with that as well. But also Texas Tech, they've been struggling for years.
Yes.
And,
Cliff.
I really wish Bruce Ruffin got that job several years back, and they went with Tommy Tuberville, and the program's just gone further south. So hopefully we could see some fun and an upset, but I'm taking the Longhorns.
Yep. I got to as well there. Yeah, Longhorns. Because, the Cliff Kingsbury era out there was an absolute disaster for them.
Yes. And how did he get an NFL gig out of that?
I have no clue. They were desperate too, apparently. All right, next up is going to be a really good AAC matchup between Army, which is ranked 22nd, and Cincinnati, which is 14th. Army goes to Cincinnati, 2:30 on ESPN, and Cincinnati is actually a 13.5-point favorite in this one. And
Fake news. America's team, Army.
I'm actually going with the Black Knights of Army and the triple option, upsetting the Cincinnati Bearcats in that one.
I agree with you. I think Army's rolling. If there's ever a crazy year for an academy team to go undefeated and have a chance at the playoff, it is 2020. Will it happen? I doubt it. But how can you pick against Army? You've got to be a patriot here. You've got to be an American. You can't ever pick against the academy. Let's go with the Black.
Okay. All right. Next up is going to be West Virginia, 1-0 at Oklahoma State, who struggled mightily and had to score 13 points in the fourth quarter just to get past Tulsa last week. West Virginia goes to Boone Pickens Stadium to take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. How do you see that one?
You talk about two programs that have been all over the map the past couple of years, up and down. Same thing with 2020. Everything's all over the map, and nothing's making sense. If I'm not mistaken, didn't Boone Pickens pass away this year? Yeah, yes. I thought that. The greatest alumni to that university did tremendous things and gave wonderful gifts to that program,
right?
Athletic and academic. But with that being said, you got to look at coaching, and I've got to go with Gundy on this. If someone can rally his troops and change it from game 1 to game 2 and turn his team around, especially after struggling, I think it's Gundy, and so I'm going to go with and the Cowboys.
But you don't know about the quarterback situation, though, because the quarterback for Oklahoma State got injured early in the game last week, so you really don't know the injury situation. So I'm going with West Virginia in that one.
Fair enough.
All right, next up is going to be, and I'm going to actually talk about this one, but we're not actually going to pick it. But if we have any Arkansas or Georgia people here, I just want to go on ahead and say that Georgia is at Arkansas. It is at 3 p.m. on the SEC network, and Georgia is a 28-point favorite. This, of course, is highlights from the last time Georgia took on Arkansas, and it was a bloodbath. Then it will be another bloodbath now. But there is an interesting little bit of connection here, because the old lost my train of thought. The new Arkansas coach is a former Georgia Bulldog from last year, Sam Pittman, and yes, sir, he goes to Arkansas from Georgia, but that won't have any issue there. I think Georgia rolls, even though he knows the scheme of Kirby Smart. I still feel like that Georgia is just too talented right now.
I have a lot of questions about that Georgia offense, and then more questions after that. I think the Georgia offense is going to struggle this season.
Yes.
With that being said, and you will hear me say this over and over on the many shows to come in the future here on the Stingray Show, if Arkansas doesn't win the coin toss, they're not going to win anything for the rest of the day.
Right. So you like Georgia?
Yes.
All right, so I said we weren't going to pick it, but apparently we picked it. Okay, once again, COVID has cost us the Tulsa-Arkansas State game as well, and I do not believe that game will be made up. Also, South Florida and Florida Atlantic will not be played as well this weekend.
Tulsa's going undefeated. We might have to put COVID in the playoff.
I know. Also, don't forget Houston, North Texas has been postponed as well. All right, so if we have any Aggie or Commodore fans out there, this one is at 6:30 on the SEC network. Texas A&M is a 31-point favorite. It is Vanderbilt at Texas A&M, and Texas A&M is currently ranked 10th in the current poll. But I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Both of us like A&M in that game.
What? Third verse, same as the first. If Vandy doesn't win the coin toss, they're not going to win anything.
Yes.
To go a step further, I think A&M has to gift them a touchdown, whether it be a snap over the punter's head
Yes.
or a breakdown of some kind of massive proportion. But it's hard for a team to throw a shutout, pitch a shutout in football, especially opening game. I think Texas A&M is going to pitch a shutout.
But Kellen Mond is without one of their starters, and I did not know this until last night. Osmond, the big wide receiver, opted out this season. So that may be an issue to look forward as we head down the stretch of them playing teams like Alabama and Mississippi State and LSU and teams like that.
Let me give you one name real quick. Demond Demos.
Okay.
He is going to be the wide receiver at A&M. He did not play his last 2 years of high school football, got injured his junior year, missed most of the season. His senior year, he transferred to another school. They wouldn't let him play. I have heard nothing but phenomenal reports coming out of practice there at A&M, there in College Station, where he is just killing it. So will they miss a little bit of a beat? Yes. But I believe the wide receiver position is going to be summed up with sparkles and stars and everything else, sprinkles, whatever you want to put on it. But to stress the point again, I don't think Vanderbilt is getting on the board at all. I think that scoreboard's been anchored down to a 0 for the Commodores this Saturday.
Right. Got a question for you. Do you like sloppy, muddy, nasty games?
Most of the time, yeah. Depending on who's playing. I mean, if it's two West Coast teams that like to pass the ball, no. But yeah, if it's Big Ten or SEC football, if it's physical brand of football, absolutely all day long. Yes.
Well, the only game that I saw that could be impacted by weather on Saturday evening is this one. The U taking on Florida State in Miami. There is a 70% chance of thunderstorms that evening, and this game, as I believe, is going to be at 6:30 on ABC, and Miami is an 11-point favorite, and Norvell, the Florida State coach, just got over and was just he was just diagnosed with COVID. So I will take the turnover chain, Manny Diaz, and the U beating Florida State in the rivalry game in the rain in Miami.
Mikey Norvell, there's always that great picture of him. I believe he played football at Central Arkansas. He's got the dreads. I don't know if you've seen that picture yet. If you haven't, Google it. It'll make you laugh.
Right.
Mikey Norvell runs a phenomenal program, but it clearly is that not his team yet at Florida State. And, of course, he's not going to be there with the craziness of COVID. But with that being said, we talked about Manny Diaz earlier in the show. Last year was a first-year head coach. Seems like he has figured out a lot of things, starting to delegate the right things to the right people. If I'm not mistaken, on the EA Sports PlayStation game ages ago, wasn't one of the things to beat Florida State in the rain? Wasn't that like almost impossible to do? Is to beat Florida State in the rain?
Yes,
it's going to happen this weekend. But that the great rivalry of wide left. I don't believe it was wide right.
Yes, and wide right. Yeah, there was both of them.
Yeah. And so, with that being said, that's going to be a rivalry game in the rain. It's just going to be nasty. Two new coaches going at it. So, hopefully, these coaches are going to be here for the next, 8, 12, 15, 20 years. And, we're talking about them like Bobby Bowden and Schellenberger back in the day.
Yes.
But Manny Diaz, so impressive as a person. I think he's figuring it out as a coach. And I'm with you. I'm with you and the U.
Yes.
Let's go with the turnover chain.
All right. So but what you're going to hear, though, even though it is in Miami, you're going to be hearing a lot of this. Oh.
My wife says I don't listen. I'm not worried about it.
So, no, but I'm going with the U knocking off Florida State and Florida State dropping down to 0-2. All right. So I think we will finish with the 2 SEC games last. So we have 4 games left. Next one is going to be NC State at Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech, that's their first game of 2020. I watched North Carolina State last weekend against Wake Forest. They really did not impress me. Even though they won that game, they did not impress me. I'm going with Virginia Tech. Even though they've had COVID issues, I still think that Virginia Tech is still the better football team there.
I think so. Virginia Tech seems like they've been on a little bit of a downtick lately.
Yes.
And that's sad. Very proud program. And, we don't live forever. We don't work forever. And Beamer ball was something phenomenal for years and years. I have an idea.
Yes.
I was explaining Beamer ball to him the other day about blocking kicks, blocking punts.
Yes.
With that being said, Virginia Tech's just slotting. Am I going to pick against them? No. I'm going to go with them. I love what Lee Corso said. He picked against the Hokies one time on game day, and lightning struck his car in the parking lot. And he said, I don't know what a Hokie is, but I know God's one of them. I'm picking the Hokies from now on. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm scared to pick against the Hokies.
Yes. I got you. All right. And then, of course, the nightcap, which I'm really interested in watching this game because I really, really like this team as one of my teams to potentially sneak up and get in the 14 playoff if the conferences start beating one another up. It is Troy traveling to the Pacific Northwest to Provo to take on Brigham Young University, BYU. No fans will be in the stadium, but BYU shellacked Navy week 1 on, I'm trying to think. Give me a second. Anyway, they knocked off Navy, and I really like BYU, so I'm going with Brigham Young and the Cougars beating the Troy Trojans.
Yeah, BYU, beautiful campus. Been up there before. Absolutely amazing. Looks like something I'll leave it to Beaver.
Yes.
But with that being said, getting back to football, I believe that BYU is going to outclass the Trojans. The Trojans, once again, that community loves Troy. And I think the men of Troy are wonderful, but they're kind of stepping out of their league, stepping out of their class.
Yes.
I believe they'll get outclassed, and BYU at an empty stadium. I still think you're going to see something special out of BYU this year.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
Jimmy McMahon always used to talk about BYU. He said his favorite thing about BYU was sitting in his rearview mirror when he left on the weekends.
Yes. All right, so let's finish up because we are in the South with 2 SEC games. We talked about one recently with Brandon. It is South Carolina traveling to Knoxville to take on Tennessee. I got the Vols in this one. I think Will Muschamp is gone after this season at South Carolina.
I've been hearing a lot of hype about South Carolina. A lot of people are picking them, which kind of shocked me. I'm interested to see Colin Hill. I've only seen highlights on YouTube. I don't know what to expect out of Colin Hill,
right.
The quarterback at South Carolina. I know that he was at Colorado State last year with Mike Bobo. Mike Bobo and Colin Hill have come to South Carolina. They're in Columbia now.
Yes.
I think that has something to do with it. Shee Smith, a great wide receiver for the Gamecocks. Where's that running game, though? Where's that running game for the Gamecocks? Other than Shee Smith, what other receivers are going to make a lot of noise for the Gamecocks? And is Colin Hill prepared for the SEC speed? I don't know. I don't think he's going to be fully prepared for that SEC speed. Pruitt, his teams are very sound defensively. I expect them to be sound defensively. Offense, that is the most horrendous. I mean, that's worse than the jersey color, right?
Yes.
But I do expect Tennessee to win this game, but I will not be shocked for a single second if Willie Muschamp pulls an upset in this one. But I'm going to go with the Volunteers.
All right, and finally, of course, it is the CBS game of the week. Gary Danielson, unfortunately, is back for another year with CBS. You got to take the good with the bad, I guess. So the 2:30 matchup is going to be the defending national champions taking on the air raid offense of Mike Leach, making his debut at Mississippi State. And let me roll the highlights, because this was the highlights from last year in Starkville. Mississippi State held their own pretty much. But man, LSU is so talented, but they're missing Jamar Chase as well. I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm actually going Mississippi State in the air raid, getting their first huge win to start off the Mike Leach era. I got the Bulldogs.
Stingray, let me give you some life advice. If the Bulldogs pull that upset, as you predicted, you need to drive across the state line and buy you a lottery ticket. Your luck is going in the right direction. I believe Mike Leach is going to throw a lot of wrinkles at LSU, and I think the Bulldogs will move the ball very efficiently against LSU. I've been hearing some bad practice reports out of LSU on defense, that they're having problems getting things together. I've heard they're having problems getting guys to practice with COVID craziness the past couple of weeks. With that being said, LSU has way too much talent. I believe Brian Haydad said the other day on his podcast that the 20th best player on Mississippi State's roster is probably the 50th best player on LSU's roster.
Right.
Although LSU is missing a lot from last year at 2 deep. But with that being said, I know Jimmy the Greek, our guest earlier, Jimmy was talking about the over-under, and I can't remember what number he said, but I think this is going to be two really bad defenses. Really, really bad defenses. I think they're both going to score at will on each other, and I think it's going to come down to mental mistakes, holding on to the football, and I think that will be the difference in the game, whether it be interceptions or fumbles or just mental breakdowns on things. So with that being said, I'll be shocked if Mike Leach gets a win in his debut. No, not at all. I'm not shocked at all if that happens. Right. But if I'm going to be serious about it and shoot straight with you, I think LSU's going to win this game. I think they'll win by 2 scores, but I don't think they're going to win by 14. I think it'll be less than 14 points.
I got you. Well, do you have anything else to add before we send off and sign off for the Stingray episode number uno?
Wow. We actually made it all the way through.
Yes.
And just a tad under 3 hours. No.
Yes. And the reason we went over longer is because we had to start later because of technical issues. So what we would like for you to do is please like and share our show, and then, of course, tell us what you thought we could improve on and what you thought that we could do better and what you liked about the show.
And a shout out to Gil Palmer. Gil's blowing me up here on Facebook. Gil, an old fraternity brother from way back in the day. Gil, how are you, brother? One of the funniest human beings I've ever met my entire life. Stingray show number 1, I believe, was his success. Jimmy the Greek wearing his helmet. I think he's hiding in public with all the fun stories he told us yesterday about him upsetting people on Twitter with COVID. I think he's in hiding a little bit. The helmet made me laugh. But Brandon, thank you, Brandon, for coming onto the show. And I think today was a success, and I'm looking forward to a fun and a very crazy, out of control, I don't know what to expect next 2020 football season. Yes,
and I do want to mention, this is a little tease, us in TV, we like to tease. I really want you guys to tune in to our show next week, because we are very, very pleased to announce that head coach Hugh Freeze will be our guest on the Stingray show. So once again, we're going to have Hugh Freeze live on the show next Thursday. You do not want to miss that.
Coach Freeze is successful at every stop he's been. I expect him to only have more success, and hopefully we see some more future stops, and maybe one here back in the Magnolia State. I don't know.
Never know. All right, man. Well, I want to thank you for all of our viewers who watched on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can, as soon as this video ends, it will be posted right there, and then you can go back and watch and preview what you missed. So without further ado, enjoy your college football, everybody, and we'll see you next week on the second edition of the Stingray Show.
See you, everybody.
Dogs and Stingray are coming for you!
This is Stephen Ray, aka Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Good afternoon, Mr. Feinbaum. Stingray here, and I'm about to shoot the bull with you like all the Auburn students do down at Auburn.
Worst defense ever!
So without further ado, here is the biggest Alabama going for the field goal. The kick is up. It is away. It is no good. Chris Davis bringing it out of the end zone. Oh, he's got blockers. Chris Davis up the sideline. Here he goes. Here we go, guys. Dobbs back to pass. Launching the ball. Jennings, he's got it. Jennings, he's got it. Touchdown, Tennessee. They shocked the Dogs in Sanford Stadium. Are you kidding me? My God almighty. What an epic way for the Tennessee-Georgia rivalry to end.